I guess before we start writing any code, what is HTML? Definitely heard of it. It's kind of the building blocks of every website. So I can't see any of the chat. If you guys also, if you have any questions, like feel free to unmute or just send it in the chat. I'll be looking at that. So what is HTML? HTML is the standard markup language for documents designed to be displayed in a web browser. It defines the meaning and structure of web content. It's often assisted with stuff like CSS and scripting language such as JavaScript. If you've ever gone to like Wikipedia or something, not how you spell Wikipedia, but if you go here and like you pretend like let's just go to this article here, and you want to change something here, like on, I don't know, you might have done this before, but you right click on your browser and click inspect. You see all this weird looking code. It looks like you're a hacker. This is pretty much HTML. You can see it's defined with this base HTML class that's kind of, or just HTML tag, sorry. And everything inside of it is the page content. So let me actually go to the HTML part. So this is, no, that's not it. It's CSS. Yeah, but this is all HTML. You have some divs, you have some spans, image tags. You're going to learn a lot of what these tags do and kind of a lot of what this code is, but this is kind of the building blocks of web development. So, one second, sorry, let me move this. I can actually see. Okay. Yeah, so this is kind of the building blocks of web development. A lot of modern frameworks like React, if you're familiar with that, they kind of render HTML. So it's kind of a function of it. And we'll see kind of how it's structured, how we can kind of get started with HTML, kind of building your first website. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click. What's it called? Right click and click new. I'm just going to create a folder here and just going to call this like my website. I'll just call it website. This will be on my desktop. I'm going to open in here. So kind of what HTML is, or at least HTML code is usually inside a .html file. So there's many ways of creating a file. I'm on Windows, so for me, I can just do right click new, just do a text document and type in like web.html. I can make this bigger actually. I'm going to rename and do web.html. Click OK. If you don't have the option to change your file extension, which is that like dot thing, you can go over to view and click on file name extensions. Or you can go ahead and open up your code editor. I use Visual Studio Code. If you guys want to download VS Code, here is the link. I'll throw that in chat. It's a pretty nice kind of code editor. Kind of comes with a lot of nice features out of the box. So yeah, go ahead and install that. And what we can do in here is like if you want to create like a file, you click this, and make this bigger. You click this new file button right up here, or let's go to the, let's pretend like you just opened it for the first time and you're not in the folder. I'm going to click file, open folder. I'm going to find that. So I created a website folder right here. I'm going to click select folder. Just like that, I'm back at where I was. So that's kind of how I would start. This is kind of how you start with a blank screen. So if you want to see your website or your HTML, you can open it with Chrome. So if I double click this, it actually opens the HTML file, and you see that it's a local file. And what that is essentially is, sorry, I was looking at something else. What was I saying? Yeah, so if you can't like double click it, let's say it opens it up in VS Code, what you can do is, like, at least I'm on Windows, so I can right click and click open with, and then open it with any browser. So if I can open it with Google Chrome, and I'll be able to see it. So right now there's nothing on here, obviously, because there's nothing in the file. Let's go ahead and get started with, they call it the HTML shell, which is just kind of like a skeleton. Like how do we get started with like the boilerplate code for an HTML file? So you need an HTML tag. And everything inside of here is, fair game considering HTML. Let me turn off Copilot. Let me stop this. I don't want to see them. Okay. Yeah. So everything inside of here is your content. So I can put like that and put this on the side here. It's a little bigger. Yeah, I save this file and I refresh it. You'll see that my content comes in here. But conventionally, you don't have text. You have structured text. You have different kinds of text. So let's say you want to have actual text, like structured text, like you want to have like a paragraph or maybe some sort of a heading. You first need a body tag. Anything inside of the body tag is kind of what the user is going to see. At least that's how I think of it. So in here, I could have the same stuff, right? And it'll show up, nothing different. But if you want to have like, structured text, like let's say we want a heading, we use H1, which stands for like heading one. It goes up to 6. So there's different sizes for headings. So I can say like heading 1. I'm going to save that. And you'll see that the style of this changes completely, right? I can do heading 2. I can make this like the tag in here 2, and it gets smaller, and I can do it up to 6 and it'll be pretty small, and it won't even look like a heading anymore. But that's kind of headings. They go up 1 to 6. You can have a paragraph, and that's just kind of like paragraph text, so that's a P tag. And I don't know if I've explained this, but like essentially everything inside of like these two tags is what's considered like the stuff. So like, for instance, like HTML, everything inside of the HTML tags is, part of HTML. It's like a child of HTML. So this will be like, this is paragraph content. And you'll see that that is the case. 1 second. Sorry. And so what we have here is kind of building blocks of content, right? So what we can do is a lot of other things. There's many other tags that we can play around with. If we want like a link, for instance, we can have an anchor tag. So it's like and then put like my link. And then there's an attribute that you can pass in to the anchor tag. It's called href. And then this is any sort of URL that you have. So if I want this to go to Google, I do https://google.com, and I refresh it. You see that this is now a clickable link, and anything inside of here is like the link that is clickable. So I can say like Google, and this will change to Google. You click on that, you'll be redirected to google.com. Just like that. If you want it to, instead of like, if you want it to like keep your like, you don't want it to like leave this page and open in a new tab, you could do like target is equal to underscore blank, and that'll open it in a new tab. But you don't really need to know that. Yeah, so that's kind of how links work. There's lists as well. There's a lot of stuff, but we're gonna kind of go over some of the stuff. So I'm gonna create a heading 2 and call this like lists. I'll kind of go over some of the lists that you can make. So you can have an ordered list, that's OL, and then inside of here, this requires list items. So every list item that's inside an ordered list is considered, a list item, but it's ordered. I think I've been saying unordered. Sorry, this is an ordered list. So what that means is it's just going to be numbered. So like this will be item 1, this will be item 2, and this will be item 3. And you'll see that it'll kind of prepend a 1 dot, 2 dot, 3 dot before like your items. The recordings will be posted on YouTube. We'll send that out to everybody. Yeah, that's a good question. It'll be in the I'll put it in like the WhatsApp, the Discord, maybe an email after as well. Yeah, so there's ordered lists. There's also unordered lists, so UL. What we have here is list items. You can have like the same kind of thing. And you can have item 1, like the same thing. So this is an unordered list. So like I can say that these are 1, 2, 3, and it'll render in that order, but you'll see that these are dots now, just like that. So any questions so far? You guys following me? I know there's a class, what is it called? Introduction to Web Technologies, I think is what it's called. This is kind of like just kind of refreshing you for that. But if you're not what's it called? If you're not familiar with that, hopefully you're still following along. Again, you can always ask. I'm down to explain if I'm going too fast. Yeah, so moving on, we can have images as well. So image, pretty much how an image tag works is you have like your image, and this is usually you don't need to close it. Though I know in like React it'll throw in like a self-closing tag. It doesn't matter. So you can do like image and then source, and that's kind of like the image that you want to do. So this has to be hosted on the internet or either like a relative image. So I'm going to do a remote image. So I have like this logo here, spar.net/c.png, and I'll give this a width of 50 pixels and a height of 50 pixels. And you'll see that it shows up right here. And in fact, we can actually kind of look at the code that we just wrote and see how it's kind of structured. So you can see that this is literally all the code that we just wrote. You have the image here, same stuff exactly. And you can see kind of what happens with when you right click and do inspect or Control-Shift-I. You can change like these attributes and see how it changes. So I can change this to 100 and it'll kind of stretch out, look wonky. And then I can rescale it by, doing it by the same factor, and it'll get bigger and bigger, just like that. This is kind of how inspect element works. It's a really useful tool. Highly recommend. I think all browsers come with some sort of an inspect element dev tools. That's what they call it. Yeah, so that's images. Now, what else is there? There's a lot of other things. I think if you like Google all HTML tags, W3 Schools is a really good resource, and you can see kind of all the different things you can have. Like you can have buttons, which we're going to play around with later, footers, a ton of stuff here, and it goes on by pages. Yeah, there's also like different like kind of styling. So if I want to make this text right here, item 2, bold, I can do like strong, and so it'll make the text strong. See that that is now bold. I can also do B. I think that does the same thing. Yeah, it doesn't change it at all. If I wanted to italicize it, I can do I. And you'll see that it's kind of italicized. And that's only if I don't have a formatter. That sucks. But yeah, ideally you wouldn't want to like make it look that confusing because it does get confusing. So anything in between the I tags, like the text will become kind of styled to that spec. So you guys with me so far? That's kind of a basic overview of HTML. Again, you have your .html files. These are kind of like posted. And also, let's say you want to have this image. Like, let's say you have it. Like, I'm going to just download this image in here. And let's say I don't want it to be remote. I just want it to be in the same, like if it's in the same directory as like your like HTML file, then you can just change it to like z.png because I just deleted it or I just downloaded it into this folder. So now it'll know what I'm talking about. So if I delete it, the website is not going to be able to find this image. But if I bring it back, it'll know what I'm talking about. Cool. So let's kind of get into CSS. The kind of the bulk of this I wanted to do is give you like an introduction to reactivity, kind of like scripting, client-side scripting. So we're not there yet, but we're gonna kind of go over some of the CSS stuff, and I promise we'll get into some good old JavaScript. So let's start off with styling. So there's different kinds of styling. You have your inline styles. So let's say we want to have like a paragraph tag here. So let's do a P, and let's give this a attribute of style. And so anything inside of here is inline CSS. So it'd probably be better if I showed you what normal CSS is. But for now, let's just say we want to give this like color of property green. So how inline in CSS works is you have, also I didn't explain what CSS is for those who aren't familiar. Like HTML, CSS is not a programming language. It's not a markup language either. It's a style sheet language. It's what you use to selectively style HTML elements. So kind of how it works, at least for inline styles, is you have a property and then the value of that property. So if I want to change the property of color, I do color : and then the property that I want to change it to. So let's make this green. Then any text inside of here will automatically be green. So I could say like hello, or like this is an image. You'll see that this is green. I can change this to red, and you get the idea. So how do you know what the attributes are, or sorry, what are the properties? Like how do you know which ones? Like how do I want to change something else, for instance? There's a really nice list somewhere. Let me find it. This is it. Here's the list. I'll put this in chat if you guys want to look through that. These are kind of all the CSS properties that you can kind of play around with. Sorry. Yeah, so there's background colors, there's stuff that we're probably going to be using, direction, display. There's a lot of different things that kind of can change how content shows up on your screen or how it's styled. So this is kind of inline CSS. So you can change, like, so we saw display. So display, what display is, if I hover over it, it actually gives me a reference. It determines the type of boxes. So it just pretty much displays, it's actually, I was thinking of visible. Maybe that's it's not a thing. Sorry, that must have been like a different thing. Okay, there's different properties like font family, like background color. That's, I've done like actual CSS in a while. So background color is like, you can have this to be like red, for instance. So the text will be black by default, and the background color of the text will be red, just like that. And then you can have multiple styles. So let's say I want to have the text to be green while the background is red. So I can put a semicolon here at the end of a line and do color, do green. It's like that. It's green now and red. So it's ugly, but you get what I mean. So if this is inline styles, this gets repetitive. Like let's say I want to kind of have a different, like this is an image. Let's say I want to have different p tags, and what's it called? You can have like, let's call this this is text, whatever. Right click or refresh it, and then what we have here is like the same thing, but let's say I want to recycle this. I could just copy paste the same style, but let's say I change it one place, like I want these types of paragraphs to be like blue. It's not going to change for the next one, right? So we want to be able to recycle some of our code. That's kind of where styles come into place. So let's actually create our first style. So in the above our body tag, there's supposed to be a head tag here. What this is, these are like, what is it? Head represents the collection of metadata for the document. So this is just kind of like important data that's needed to kind of determine what kind of website you're on. So there's different properties there's different properties inside of your head tag, like title. So you'll notice that right now the title of this tab here is web.html. Let's say I want to change this to sample site. I'll save that, put a title, and you'll see that it's sample site, just like that. It'll change. Let's also have some other stuff like style. And in here, what's it called? Hold on, give me 1 second. Yeah, so what was I saying? So you have a style tag. Anything inside a style tag is essentially your CSS. So it's not HTML inside of here. So I can't do like P or whatever. It's not gonna make sense. In fact, if I do that, you see that like my it's not gonna know like the syntax highlight screws up completely. It wants raw CSS in here. So what is CSS? Let's say I want to change all the P tags. So I'm gonna get rid of this style here. Just keep these normal so it'll look like that. And let's say I want to change all the P tags as style. So let me kind of minimize this so you guys can actually see this a little better. So I'm going to do P and then this is our selector. So P and then curly braces. I'm going to click enter in between here. Kind of start typing in my properties. This inside of here is your declaration. So now we can use those same kind of inline styles, but kind of list multiple. So let's say I want to have a color of green and a background color of, let's do black. Now you'll see that when I save it and refresh, every single paragraph tag has that same kind of style. There's different ways of actually kind of doing this as well. Like let's say you don't want to have your style in the same file as your HTML. Yeah, as your HTML. What you can do is you can create a style sheet. Do like style.css. I'm just creating a file called style.css. And in here, I'm just going to copy the code that I just wrote in this style sheet or in that style tag, save it in here. And then to link it, we can just get rid of this and do link href. Href is going to be like where that is relative to this page. So style.css, remember, because it's in the same directory as our HTML file, so it'll know what we're talking about. And yeah, you just have to self close it here. You need another property here called rel. I don't know, what does rel mean. So this is attribute names the relationship of the link document. So we have to give it the relationship, which is a style sheet. This is essentially a style sheet. So if I refresh it, nothing should change, right? Because now all of our styles are linked to this file. So what I can do in here is add some more stuff. So let's say I want to give padding in between the text. Let's say I want this background to be a little more pronounced. So I can do like padding. Let's do like 10 pixels. You'll see that it looks a little better. And we can do the same thing for headings as well. So let's say we have our heading 1 here. So we'll do heading 1. So this is our selector. We're selecting headers, and then we're going to do our declarations. So in our declaration, let's say we want to make it like, let's do font style. In here, you can actually, my IntelliSense kind of gives me a lot of stuff we can do. So we can give it an italic style. We can give it normal, oblique. Let's do italic just to show that it works. And then we can have like a, there an underline. We'll do like font. Let's see what we can play around with here. There's a lot of different things, and I know IntelliSense can kind of do you a favor. I think VS Code kind of comes out of the box with a lot of this stuff, which is really nice. We can do like font weight, and that's kind of like how bold you want the text. So I'm gonna make it like as bold as possible, which I believe is bolder. And you'll see that doesn't change, but whatever. I think by default headings are like that. But you'll see that you know, these styles come just like that. Now, let's say you want to have the same kind of style for headings. You can kind of list them out. So you can have like you can put a comma here in your selectors, and this can be a list of selectors. So we can do heading 1 and get rid of, I'll comment this out, and I forgot to explain. So comments in HTML, like let's say I want to comment something. What we can do is we open up a tag, put an exclamation point here, 2 hyphens, and then another 2 hyphens, and then a greater than sign. It's weird, but this is a comment. You'll see that your code editor will gray it out because it's code that's essentially not going to be run. So you can have comments in your code. So I can say below is my style sheet reference. and you'll see that nothing really changes except for, well, that changed because we just saved it. And then if I want to comment this out in CSS, if you want to comment things out, just like in JavaScript, or at least multi-line comments, you have a / asterisk, and then to close it off, you have a asterisk / and stuff like that. It'll work like that. If you want to do it quickly and you're in VS Code, you can do like control and then / and it'll kind of do everything, and so all the styles will go away. But that's just like a macro, I guess. You guys with me so far? We all good on this? Am I going too fast, going too slow? Okay, cool. Yeah, so hopefully, yeah, so let's bring all that back. And you can see that like we can list out a lot of other things. So I can make heading 2. Remember, that's our lists here. I can make heading 2 work like that. Or save it, and it'll be applied to that as well. But essentially, this isn't really a good practice, because what we're doing here is essentially throwing every single paragraph tag. Every single paragraph tag, if it wants to opt out of this style, it essentially can't, or it'll be harder to do it. You have to do a lot more work. So kind of something to think about is classes. This is kind of the convention of styling, is you have classes. So to declare like a class, I'm going to keep this paragraph style. I'm just going to change the selector here, and I'm going to call this let's change it for, yeah, we'll call this, we'll change it for the paragraph. So to declare a class, you do dot and then the class name. So I'm going to call this dot caption. So this will be a class. Yeah, it just kind of gives you a preview here. So you can have your element and then give it a property of class. Is there a way to declare multiple styles for one type of element, like having 2 possible paragraph styles? Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing right now. At least this is the conventional way of doing it. So we can have captions, or sorry, we can have classes. So let's say I want to apply a paragraph tag, or let's say I want to apply this style, the style set, to like any element really, or we can limit it to paragraph tags. So we can do paragraph and then do class is equal to caption, right? Because that's what we call this. We call this dot caption. You get rid of the dot. The dot is just declaring that or essentially just saying that it's a class. So I'm going to save both of these, and you should see that it's all gone except for this one. If you want it to be, if you want it to only work for paragraph and class name option, so like let's say we want to put the same style here, caption, and you'll see that it puts that there. Let's say we don't want that to happen. We only want it to work for paragraphs with caption. You could do p dot caption, and you'll see that it goes away for that style. So that kind of lets you I guess, override, really. You can do h1. Let's call this actually h1 dot caption. So you can have the same style sheet and it'll apply to that. Yeah, it doesn't change anything, but because it was already h1. But essentially, if I like comment this out, you'll see that it goes back to normal. And if I get rid of this class here, it'll stay the same because we got rid of it. But I'm going to bring it back here just to kind of show you. So yeah, so that's kind of how that works. That's classes. This is kind of how you can have different classes. So let's kind of I probably should have let's think of some ways we can kind of make different classes. So let's say I want one for a caption. So let's actually make it like a caption. So padding, that's fine. We can make this like gray and text color, or what was I thinking of? Sorry. Does that look more like a caption? I guess, yeah. We can make this, we don't need to have a background color. And then we can change the font size to small. Small is an actual thing. And it'll look more like a caption. We can, do font style italic, just to kind of give it that, just so it kind of looks like a caption or maybe like a quote. And that's kind of how you do that. Now we can have different classes. So let's call this like H1, or let's make it specific to, let's make these a little more recyclable. So I'm going to do another one for like header. I'll just call this class name header, and I'll put this here just so this example kind of makes more sense, because I was just kind of writing names down and not really. But you see that nothing changes, but now it's a little more. It makes more sense. So if I want to use this header or this header style for another class or for another element, I can, like, let's say I want to go to this header, and I can do a or class is equal to header, and now you'll see that that style is being recycled. So that's kind of a basic overview of HTML, CSS. I know there's a lot more in CSS. I haven't done like raw CSS in a while, so I'm a little rusty. I know you guys can definitely tell that. Typically, if you use tools like Tailwind, they kind of do a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Like, you just kind of have to remember the rules. And I know a lot of DOM scripting, which is stuff we're actually going to do today, is essentially like it's different. It's different than this, but it's very similar. Like, you'll get the gist of it. So let's kind of, we're good on styling. We kind of understand the basic idea of styling. Yeah, I'll just take that as a yes. Oh, sorry, I wasn't looking at chat. Yeah, thanks. So let's kind of move on to, I'd like to call it the more exciting stuff. I don't really care for a lot of front end stuff. Well, I guess this whole thing is front end. So let's kind of get into some of the programming, the actual scripting. So hold on, let me open this up. Yeah, so let's get started here. So I'm gonna kind of let's clean this up a little bit. I'm gonna see what what do I want to do with this. Yeah, let's get rid of like all this stuff. The caption. Okay, so all that stuff's gone. We'll give it a blank slate. We'll keep that style sheet there, but I'll get rid of this. Give it a blank slate. All right. So, what is like, how do you make this page interactive? So kind of what you've been seeing right now is like, it's just static content. Like, I just got rid of everything, but like, I click on this, nothing happens. It's all kind of just thrown at my face. Nothing I can really interact with. Kind of modern web applications, you've used them on a daily basis. They don't ever have static content. It's always dynamic in the sense that you can always interact with it. So how do we make our websites interactive? So essentially what you'd want to use is like JavaScript, at least natively. That's kind of how every web browser kind of supports it natively, like when you're on an HTML site. So let me read this quickly. So JavaScript DOM scripting is an essential skill for front-end developers who want to create dynamic and interactive web pages. The document object model, which is what DOM stands for, is a programming interface that represents the structure of an HTML document as a tree-like structure of nodes and objects. With JavaScript, developers can access and manipulate the content that you see on your screen, and the structure of the DOM to create dynamic user interfaces, handle events, and perform various other tasks. And we're going to cover kind of the fundamentals of DOM scripting. Take care, Lavender. So let's kind of get started with that. So what is the DOM tree? So let's kind of see how we can interact with JavaScript. So on any website, really, if I go to like Google, whatever, I can just do it here. I go to my kind of inspect element, my dev tools here, and I click on console. This is a JavaScript shell, essentially. So I can kind of run anything I want, essentially. So for those who aren't familiar with JavaScript, to kind of do like a hello world, you can do console.log, and let's do hello world. You'll see that the output is hello world. That's just basic JavaScript. Yeah, so this JavaScript actually executed on the shell of this website, or it's not really, but it's essentially being run on this website on your computer, not any sort of server. This is completely running on on the client, as we call it. So how do we access like attributes of our website, so we can make it like interactive. So there's this global variable, global object called the document. If you type in document, it's going to spit out everything that is essentially just the document. You have your HTML, your head, which has our pretty much just our HTML file. So that's kind of our document. So what we can do is we can access things with the document. So there's different kinds of accessors or accessor methods. So let's say I want to access, this heading 1. So to do that, let's create a, where should I make this? I think it has to be below everything. I'm not actually too sure, but you need to have a script tag. So just like having a style tag, everything inside the style is CSS. Everything inside the script tag is JavaScript. So if I start typing HTML in here, it's not going to know what you're doing. It expects JavaScript. So I can do like console.log hello, save it, run, refresh my page. You're not going to see it because it's running in the console. So I have to go in my console and you'll see that it opened up. It prints out hello and it gives me where it did that, web.html on line 10, just like right here. So now we have JavaScript running in our console or in our website. So how do we kind of interact? So let's say I want to access this, this right here, this heading. So I can do document dot I'm gonna put this recording out on Discord and pretty much every other channel that we have. Yeah, don't worry about it. So document dot, I didn't mean to say don't worry about it as in I don't care. I'm gonna put it out there, don't worry. So document dot, let's say I want to access this heading, and I'll show you what I mean by access. Like let's just say we want to get the text inside of here, so I can do document dot, and it'll give me a ton of different methods. So there's a lot of stuff that you can play. These are JavaScript built-in methods for the document. So I can do get element by class name. So just get element by class name. What exactly does that mean? Remember, we define heading to have a class of header. So I can do that and it expects a class name. So I'm going to do header just like we defined it up here. And let's do like dot. You can access more stuff in there. So yeah, you can do like dot item. Actually, I don't know what it's doing. Let's do something I'm actually familiar with. So document dot query selector, pretty much what it does is, remember how we have selectors in CSS? So like if I have, let's say I define that header class again. Let's give it a background, or let's just give it like background color of, let's say you can see that right there. So just like this is our selector dot header, that's our class declaration. Let's say I want to select that, so I can do dot header and I save it. You can do dot, let's console log the value just so we have somewhere to put this, just so we can see what exactly we're doing here when we're accessing different parts of our website. So I'm going to save this, run it. You'll see that it kind of found the element that we were looking for. But let's say I don't want to get this like XML object. I want to get like the value inside of here. So you can do dot, I think it's dot inner HTML. Yeah. And that'll print out like the actual value. So if I change this to like heading 5, that value changes as well as it changes here because that's kind of where it's being put at. Yeah, so that's kind of how you access stuff. You can also manipulate the DOM. This is kind of the document object model, right? So this is the document. This document is an object, and we can actually change certain attributes of our DOM by doing like document dot. Let's say I want to change like the background of our website using DOM. We can do document dot body dot style dot background color, and you'll see that these methods like background color, it's in CSS, it's background dash color. In DOM, in like JavaScript, it's background color in camel case. So it's a little different, but you can't really have like, can you have hyphens in variable names? No, you can't. So that's kind of why they did it. So let's say I want to change the color of my body. So that's just kind of the background of the website. Let's say I want to change it to gray. So you just kind of set it equal to gray and it'll change just like that. Let's say I want to change the style of this header. So I just showed you how to access it. So let's go back and access that value. So query selector dot header. We want to get that one header right here. And let's do dot style. And actually, let's kind of do this correctly. So let's say I want to have access to this right here. So this element. So I can set this to a variable. I'll call this const header. And in JavaScript, you can have you declare variables by putting a prefix here, like a const. You can have let. You can do let header or const header. For the scope of this, it doesn't really matter. So we can do header dot what's it called? Style, and that's equal to we can change like the style. So just like how we did inline CSS, we can do that here as well. So let's say I want to change the background color differently. You can do it like this as well, or you could change the style into like an inline style. They both do the same thing, so we can make it like kind of look like yeah, the background will just kind of dissolve because it's the same thing. We can make this like black, and our stuff is still there, but the color is different. So this is another way of changing your style through DOM scripting. How do we change text? So let me get rid of this style. Let's say I want to change the value of this header. You can do header dot text content and set that equal to header. Let's say welcome to my site. Refresh, and you'll see that that value actually changes through the JavaScript. So this script will actually run as soon as your like website loads on your computer. So this is being run by your browser, and it'll change the value kind of that's being thrown out there. You can also have inner HTML. So what that is you can have like a string here that represents HTML. So let's say I want to have it let's have like it's italicized text here, and obviously there's many ways of doing that, but let's say I want to do it like this, have by using like the I element. I can have like welcome, and it'll render just like that. So a lot of different ways of doing that. Yeah, so we can also do okay, for the sake of time, I'm gonna kind of speed up a little bit here. I didn't really get to do a lot, but so let's say, so right now all we were able to do is kind of change elements. How do we add elements? What we can do is let's first create a I'm gonna actually just change this to like welcome to my normal person, and we'll have a let's call, so there's different ways of kind of separating blocks of code, or separating blocks of HTML or sections, I guess. And they're usually unstyled by default. So we use divs. What do they stand for? Should know, like division. Div has no special meaning at all. Okay, it just represents its children. It can be used with class, slang, and title attributes to markup. So yeah, we can just use it to kind of group things up together. So a div essentially is you can have literally anything you want in here. It doesn't matter. It'll be unstyled. It won't have anything in it. But what we can do is we can have kind of an area where we can manipulate our content. So I'm going to do div. You can do class. I'm going to do ID. The convention typically for manipulating stuff in JavaScript is you use an ID to actually to like get the element. So right here we actually selected the element using its class. Typically, you might have multiple headers that'll use that class, or you might have multiple headings that use that class header. And so this function would just return like the first one it found. Typically we want to use ID because it's more useful for Java, or it's more useful to interact with JavaScript as it is like having to interact with like using classes for CSS. It's kind of like that. So I'm gonna have an ID property in here and give this a value of groceries. I spelled groceries right? I did. Okay, cool. And I'm gonna make sure I'm muted. Okay, I can hear my audio. Okay. So let's create like a grocery list. So by default it'll be a actually let's make this like an ordered list actually. And this will be a list. It'll be throwing in a list of grocery items, but we're not going to be doing it how you think. So typically what you could do is you could have like a list tag here and say like apples, and you have like oranges. Typically that would work fine, but let's say we want it to render in our JavaScript. Let's see how we can create elements with JavaScript. So what we can do in here is groceries. We can do, let's see how I want to do this. We can do something like, first I'm just going to get rid of this stuff. We'll keep that background gray. You could, if you want, instead of having JavaScript to execute it, you could just have an inline style here if you're lazy like me and do like background color gray. And same exact thing. I'll get rid of this just to prove it. It's the same exact thing. Or you could do it here and do body background color gray. It's the same exact thing. I'll do that just because it's cleaner. Yeah, so in here, let's get access to this object. So I'm going to do document.query selector. And to access ID, so for classes, remember it's dot and then your class name. So if I want to get access to that, it'd be dot header. For IDs, it's hashtag. So I'm going to do hash groceries. So now that's how I'll get access to that DOM element. So I'm going to do const groceries element. And that'll be equal to that. Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's say I want to kind of have a list of groceries here. So I'm going to just declare an array of groceries. Spell groceries. I spelled it wrong here. It's embarrassing. Okay. And kind of to make like lists of objects or lists of like items, if you have your square brackets here. So I want to create a list of grocery items. So we have like apples. So that's a string. I want to have another one called like oranges, another one in between these double quotes or single quotes, and grapes. So I screw something up here. Why is my syntax messed up? It's thing messed up. Oh, I didn't close something. What's wrong with my, did I screw something up? Okay, I guess it's just Visual Studio. I don't know what it's doing with the syntax here. I thought I screwed something up. Let me reopen it. Okay, I have no idea why it's doing. Do I need a semicolon? Okay, I guess I do need a semicolon. That's just syntax highlighting. I got scared there for a second. But yeah, semicolons are optional in JavaScript. So yeah, so what we can do is, let's say I want to create, I want to append this array into here. So I can do like for, you guys know how for loops work, hopefully. In JavaScript, you can do like for, like you can do, what are these called? Iterators or something. I don't know what these are called, but you can do like let item of groceries. So it'll iterate and declare this local variable item each iteration. So that's just a quick way of doing that. So to actually create an item in DOM scripting, we can do const list item. Remember, instead of doing like list item statically here, we can do list. We're just going to set this variable to list item and then document dot create element, and this will be an li tag just like we did it up here. And let's set the properties that we need of the array or coming from the array. So I can do list item dot text content is equal to the item. So that'll be like apples, oranges, and grapes. And we can change the font as well, or the font style. So let's do list item dot style dot font size is equal to larger. So it'll be a little larger. You can do it with whatever you want. And now let's finally add it to this ordered list. So to do that, we can do groceries element dot append child. What that means is it's pretty much appending it as a child. So it's pretty much how these relationships work. So if you have like, let's say we have a p tag, and let's say we have a list tag in here. So let's call this test. So this list item element is a child of this groceries ordered list, and this ordered list is a parent of, or yeah, it's a parent of this list item. That's kind of how that works. So that's kind of where it's getting that nomenclature from. Append child, and then inside of here we need a node that we're throwing in here. So that's our list item. So I'm going to throw in that, the thing that we just created and styled dynamically. Save that, and you should see that it's now kind of rendering it based on what we're doing in here. So if I want to add something to our array, I can do like banana. I don't know how to spell bananas. That's why I have C spell here. And you'll see that it adds it to there when I refresh the page. That's kind of how you add stuff. What else do we have here? We have 15 minutes left. So that's kind of how that works. What else do we got here? We can do some form validation. We can do some. Okay, let's try to combine both of these things. So there's still some more things. Right now, we haven't really interacted with anything. We've just looked at stuff and technically dynamically rendered stuff. So let's kind of do some. Let's do some interactive stuff. So get rid of all this stuff. Get rid of this ordered list. And yeah, so let's create a to-do application. So if you guys aren't familiar with like a to-do application, what you're doing is essentially you have like a list of to-dos. So let's say I have like a list of to-dos, to-dos, like stuff I have to do. You have like a list, like one, pick up trash, probably throw away trash, but you know, if you're living filth, then you got to pick up your trash. Two, do homework, stuff like that. And you know, typically in a to-do application, you have a way to kind of you know, get rid of the to-do, like when you actually did something, and then you have a way to add stuff to it. So let's kind of build an application like that. Let's see how far we can get. So let's kind of get the structure of it. So let's change this to like my to-do app, or let's call it my to-dos, stuff I have to do. So let's have a list here. Before we do that, let's kind of do a little bit of a background on inputs. So right now, again, we haven't done anything that like the user can interact with. There's this input tag here that kind of lets you type stuff into it. So you can see, boom, I can type stuff into this input. I can't do anything with it right now. We're not doing anything with the value, but it's there. Typically, you want to give it a type of something. So you can have like a input of type button, and it'll turn into like a button. You can have it like a checkbox, and it'll turn into a checkbox, just like that. We're just going to do text for now because we want to be able to add stuff to our to-do. So yeah, so I want to give this an ID of to-do input, and you'll see what we're going to do with this value and how we're going to get it later. And let's have a button here. So a button, how this works is anything in between the button is like what's going to be shown on the button. So let's call this create, and you'll see that if I could create, nothing happens. We haven't programmed that yet. Yeah, and then yeah, that's kind of that. And then we also need kind of an output, a place where we're going to throw in like our to-dos, a list of stuff to do. So I'm going to create an unordered list. Probably makes sense if it's an ordered list. Yeah, we'll call it an unordered list just because I did that. And we'll give this an ID of to-dos, like our list of stuff to do. And then let's make this a little nicer. So we'll do black background and white text color, because by default it's black. Text color, black, white, sorry, it's color, not text color. And now it's a little better. And then this looks ugly, so I'll just do like color. Yeah, I'll just get rid of this. Yeah, we'll just do color white. No, pretty white. We'll just do black. It looks contrasts a little better. So we're just kind of setting up the structure. That's kind of what we're doing right here. So essentially what we want to be able to do is we want to have our list items, just like how we appended it before. We want it to be inside of this UL tag. So how we're going to do that is let's first get our to-dos. That'll be in this UL tag. So we can do that by doing const to-dos list is equal to document dot query selector. We're going to be looking for our to-dos ID. So that's hash to-dos. So that'll be our to-dos list, and we're going to be manipulating that after. Now we need a way to kind of make this button work, this create button. So to do that, I can put an attribute or a property here in the button called onClick, and anything inside of this string is pretty much JavaScript evaluated code. So if I do like console.log test, that's not going to work. You need to have it to be like a callback function. But believe me, if you bind it correctly, we actually have to create a function called like create to do. So let's do function create to do, and this to create a function, you need to have like the function keyword and then the function name and then any sort of arguments you need in here. We're not going to be taking arguments. We're just going to be, the arguments will be taken from our input, or at least our input, like that. And then anything inside of here will be considered the function, like it'll run the code in here. So let's say I want to do like console.log test, and on click, we want it to run create to do. What I can do is I can show my console. I could create, sorry, it needs to be a like that. Refresh it as well. I think this worked as well. You just need to be able to pass like the function. But you see when let me clear this. When I click create, it'll console log test, because when we click do on click, it'll run create to do as a function. So it'll kind of do that every time we click on it. So we want it to pretty much, let's write out what we want to do. So when the user clicks create to, or sorry, when it clicks create, we want it to essentially take, make this a little nicer. We want it to take user input, the user input from that like input tag from to do input. I'll put the selector in here so we'll know later. We want it to take it from there, and I'm just putting also comments in JavaScript are with 2 forward slashes. That's how that works. And we want it to take the user input when they click it, and we want it to append, pretty much append child, like how we did it before, to the unordered list of to-dos. That's kind of what we're trying to do here. So when we do that, how do we get the text from this input? It's pretty simple. We can do, let's create a variable here called, let's call this const input value. That's equal to document dot query selector. And we're going to want to get that to do input. So the hash to do input, that'll be taking, so like this input value is currently referring to this right here. So to actually get the value, you can do dot value. Weird, it's not showing up as a, okay, I don't know why it's not showing up, but oh, I don't think it's intrinsic. But anyways, anything like the query selector dot value, that's going to be what's inside of there. So if I do like console.log input value, I know we're running out of time, so let's try to get as far as we can. We did have a late start. So let's say I want to create, like, let's say I run this create, click this button. Oh, it's the same thing. Let's call this like test to do, and I'll click create. It still says test. Should I refresh? Let's see what I did wrong here. document.query selector. Does it need to be binded? Okay. Okay, I think okay, sorry. You have to actually put the function invocation here or whatever you have to call the function when it on clicks. I just had it here referenced, so the value was always cached. So like it's weird, but you got to have when you want to pass in a function in an on click, you have to put the actual invocation, because when you actually run this function, let's say you just want to run it separately, you can do like create to do. So this doesn't actually run it. It just like creates an instance of it, but it doesn't run it. But to actually run it, you have to put the parentheses to actually invoke it. So I just forgot to do that. So now we have that input value. Let's kind of do some alerting to see if they actually put a value in. So if this is an if statement, so if no input value, that's what the exclamation put is, like a not. So if there's no input value provided, we can return an alert. And an alert is pretty much like a native thing. It's a native function in all web browsers. So I can do alert, please enter something, instead of returning it blank. So if I click this, it'll run it, or let me refresh. Yeah, so right now this input is blank. You'll see that there's nothing in here, but if I put something in here, this code is not going to run anymore. So now we have some error handling. That's nice to have. Let's create a list item. So const to do item. And this will be equal to document create element. Now we're going to append it as a child to our unordered list. This will be a list item. Let's give it the content that the user put in. So that'll be our input value. So in order to do that, we do to do item dot inner text. You can do inner text, or you could do text content. Text content is standard. You do input value, and now that'll be inside of there when we append it. Now we can append it now. We can do to do list, to do's list. Dot append child. We want to append it inside of that to do's tag. So now we can do the text item that we actually created, or the to do item that we created. That's the node. So now when we refresh this code, or refresh the page, we can create this. It says please something to do, enter, and then I can do like do homework, click create, and now that's inside of here. So if I look inside inspect element, we have a list item here, and you can see in my file there's no list item because it's being run on the client. So this is all temporary. So the moment I refresh, it's gone completely. There's ways to actually have data persist using local storage, but we're kind of out of time, and it'd be cool to have that, but maybe in the future we can kind of make this persistent. But for now it's temporary. Yeah, so you can kind of enter all this stuff and it'll dynamically put it inside of here based on the user's input. Let's quickly figure out how you want to delete to-dos, and this uses events. So first of all, let's kind of make it easier for the user to know. This is kind of like a UX rule. Like a basic UX rule is that if you have something clickable, the user should know it's clickable. So let's make it so that if they click on this list item, it'll like delete. So to know that it's clickable instead of like an info, like it's kind of, you see how my cursor is turning into that eye. Let's do to do item dot what's the style? Yeah, that's style dot cursor, and we want that set equal to pointer. And I'll show you what that does. So right now, it's showing up like I can highlight. If I refresh it and add some to dos, you can see that it looks clickable now. So now the user knows that you can click on it. So let's actually make it so that it'll when the user clicks on this, it'll delete itself. So how we can do that is we can use these things called event listeners. So to kind of when we create this element, we can put an event listener on it, so we can listen for a certain event. For our instance, we're going to listen for the event click, and when it's clicked, it'll delete itself from the DOM. So to do that, we do to do item dot add event listener, and have a There's a lot of different events. In fact, I don't even remember if I have like a list of all the events. I don't have a list of the events, but there's a lot of, you can search up JavaScript DOM events. You can listen for a lot of different things on your browser, or like the client. We want to listen for when that element is clicked on. So when it's clicked on, we can run a function here. This is a callback function. So for those who aren't familiar with JavaScript, this is really weird, especially if you're coming from like a non-scripting background. This is essentially just an anonymous function. It's weird. Just bear with me. It's essentially like a function that'll just run every time you like this gets fired. Essentially, just think of it like that. So I have a anonymous function here, and in here, let's say I want it to remove itself from the DOM when it's clicked on. So you can do to do item dot remove, just like that, and it'll delete itself. So let's say like do homework, take trash out. So now you can see that it looks clickable by the user, because by default it's not. So let's say I want to take the trash out. I click on it, it goes away. You just saw that my thing is gone. When I click on it, boom, it's gone away from my to-dos. Let's do one more thing and I'll end it. Right now, it kind of looks weird. Let's make it so that when we hover over it, it'll put like a strike through, just so it looks a little more reactive. And this is kind of the epitome of like reactive web development. So when we hover over, let's make it so that when we hover over it, we can add a style called line through. That'll pretty much just look like it's being about to be like killed or something, or like deleted. So to do that, we can do we can add an event listener. There's another way of doing it using like I don't know what these are called, but you can do like document dot on mouse like over. You can do on click as well. So this actually, if I change this to, let's keep it consistent here. So that works as well. You can also do on document dot or to do item dot on click is equal to that anonymous function. And yeah, so let's just see if that works and refresh it. You can see that when you, it's the same exact thing. So you can do to do item dot on click, or you could do the more verbose way and do add event listener. They both work. So let's do one where we listen to when it's being hovered over. So to do item dot on mouse over. That's equal to a anonymous function again. It'll pretty much just run when on mouse over is that event is being fired. So we can do this dot style. So it's referring to, this is essentially being referred to its like, again, this is document object model. So everything's kind of stored in an object or a class. So we can have a bit of like object oriented programming. You can console log this. If you actually, let's do that real quick. So if you do console log this, the expected output would just be this DOM element here. So I'll do that right now. Refresh, go to my console and create some to-dos. If I hover over it, you'll see that it's being printed out here. It's printed out every time I hover over this element. So that's what this is. So we can use this dot, like, let's get rid of this console log. This dot style dot text decoration. And every time it's being moused over, we can do line through. And every time it's, when they hover out of it, we can just put no text. We can put no, like a, so here, I'll show you what I mean. So we can do like do homework. Right now, I hovered over it instantly, and it's going to stay like that forever now. So we want it to track when we also hover out of it. So right now, we're just tracking if it's over it, and now forever it's going to stay line through because we changed that that reference. So to do that, we can do the same thing, but do to do item dot on mouse out. And again, there's a list of all these little things you can do. In fact, if you want to look at it, you can do to do dot and then look at all the little DOM methods you could do. So on submit, there's a lot of different things, and there's also like resources out there. So if I do like Don, what did I have? Yeah, on mouse out, that's equal to a function, and we do this dot style dot text decoration. that's equal to nothing, or none. And what that'll do is pretty much take away that line through that we originally had. So refresh it, add like do homework, and you'll see that every time I hover in, it'll stay in there and I'll hover out. So if I like, let's add like a couple just so it looks a little easier. And I'll go to my elements here. You'll see that the style is that inline style is being appended from when we actually create it right here. You'll see that actually show up. And you'll see that when I hover over it, you see that the thing is being put in right here, or I can't like show it at the same time, but you'll see that the inline style is being changed every time we hover over it, and that's the DOM kind of doing its magic. It's listening for those events. Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I kind of had to speed it a little at the end. We were kind of short on time, but yeah, that's kind of all I had. I had some more stuff that I wanted to do, but I think this is a good foundation, hopefully, for front end web development. Again, this is like a very low. This is like the lowest level of web development. There's a lot of like layers of abstraction, let's call it, for web development. Like React, for instance, is a web framework that'll kind of write all this code for you using maybe a more friendly and I guess developer friendly way of doing things, a lot more expansive, because like a lot of this stuff, a lot of this code can be refined a lot more, which is why there's so many web frameworks out there. And we've done React. We'll probably do another React framework or React workshop, because I think it's a really important skill. I also love React. So that's pretty much what React is it pretty much simplifies all this whole process for you. And so all this code might look like very verbose, and it is, especially when there's so many other alternatives out there that'll kind of write this code for you. You just have to learn the syntax of the other framework. So that's kind of all I had. Thanks for coming. Does anyone have questions? Maybe something that they wanted to go through? Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you guys for coming. Again, I'm sorry about the thing in the beginning. What functions would you have to say? Yeah, so if you want to look for persistent storage, you can I'm trying to think, was there a good way to do this? Persistent storage, it's this, you can do local, it's called local storage, and you can do like, let's say I want to, when we create a to do, let's say I go down here and do local storage dot, I can set an item, so I can do set item, let's call it current to do, or we'll call it like last to do. We still have to implement a lot. I'm just going to kind of show you how it works. And then let's set it to the value that we have it. So to do item, or to do input value, sorry. This is going to be a string that'll be set in our local storage. So if I refresh and do like do homework, create, it's being saved actually. You can see where it's actually being saved in your inspect element. You can click over here and click on application. Never show your cookies to anyone. You could go over here to click on local storage, and then file. You'll see that. Oh man, I hope none of these are alive. I don't know why I have so many stuff here, but you can see the last to do is let's get rid of. I don't know what all these are. This is from like last time. Oh, I got rid of it. Hold on. Let's create that again. But you can see that the last to do that you entered, it'll stay in there. So if I refresh the page, it's going to actually stay here. If I close out of the browser and then like I come back, that same website, go back to the same place, you'll see that it actually stays there. There's some lifecycle stuff that you have to do to actually manage. Like let's say you wanted to print out, like kind of you wanted to re-render what was saved in your local storage. There's a lot of more stuff you have to do, and we have taught that, and we'll definitely do that, something like that in the future. But local storage is where you'd want to get started on. That's how we do that. Could you link the Discord? Yes.